Welcome, weary traveler of the modern world, to a journey through the shadows and splendor of medieval times. Tonight, as you settle into the comfort of your bed, surrounded by the safety and conveniences that define our contemporary existence, we invite you to drift back through the centuries to an age when life itself was a daily negotiation with pain, uncertainty, and forces beyond human understanding. You are about to explore four interconnected stories that reveal the full spectrum of medieval experience, from the most brutal medical procedures to the heights of royal luxury, from revolutionary scientific achievements to ancient mysteries that still puzzle us today. These tales will carry you through the cobblestone streets of Canterbury, into the libraries of Islamic scholars, beneath the waves of the Mediterranean, and through the gilded halls of French palaces. As your breathing deepens and your mind begins to wander, allow yourself to become immersed in a world where survival required constant vigilance, where knowledge was precious beyond measure, and where the gap between commoner and nobility was as vast as the distance between Earth and stars. Tonight, you will witness both the suffering and the splendor that defined medieval civilization, understanding how far we have traveled from those distant days while appreciating the remarkable achievements of our ancestors. Let the rhythm of history wash over you as we begin our exploration with perhaps the most terrifying medical procedure of the medieval world, a practice that promised to cure madness by drilling holes directly into the human skull. The bell tower of Canterbury Cathedral chimes in the distance as you wake to another morning of unbearable agony. For 3 weeks now, the pain in your head has grown steadily worse, transforming from occasional sharp pangs into a constant, throbbing torment that makes even the softest candlelight feel like molten metal poured directly into your brain. You are Thomas, a 15-year-old apprentice to Master Geoffrey the cloth merchant, and what began as simple headaches after a fall from a ladder has become something that the local healers whisper about in hushed, fearful tones. Your master, growing increasingly frustrated with your inability to perform even the simplest tasks, has finally agreed to seek help from Brother Aldrich at the monastery of Christ Church. The cost, nearly 6 months of your earnings, represents a fortune that your family can ill afford, but the alternative seems to be watching you slowly descend into what the townspeople call the devil's madness. The monastery infirmary stands apart from the main cathedral complex, a squat stone building that seems to absorb rather than reflect the pale morning light. As Brother Aldrich leads you through its heavy wooden doors, you are immediately struck by the peculiar atmosphere within. The air is thick with the mingled scents of dried herbs hanging from the rafters, the metallic tang of blood that no amount of cleaning can entirely remove, and something else, a sweet, cloying odor that you cannot identify, but that makes your stomach turn with instinctive dread. Brother Aldrich is a man of perhaps 40 years, his face bearing the scholarly pallor of someone who spends most of his time bent over manuscripts and medical texts. His hands, you notice with growing unease, are stained with what appears to be old blood beneath the fingernails, and when he speaks, his voice carries the calm certainty of someone who has performed the procedure he is about to describe many times before. The evil humors have become trapped within your skull, he explains, his fingers probing gently at your temples in a way that sends fresh spikes of pain through your head. They press against the walls of your mind like water against a dam, creating the torment you experience. The only solution is to provide them with a pathway for escape. The instrument he shows you is called a trepan, and it appears to be nothing more than a circular saw attached to a wooden handle. The cutting edge is made of bronze, sharpened to a razor's keenness, and the entire device has been decorated with intricate religious carvings that seem grotesquely inappropriate given its intended purpose. Brother Aldrich explains that the design has been passed down through generations of physician monks, refined and perfected through countless applications on patients suffering from conditions similar to your own. The procedure, he tells you, is actually quite ancient. Greek and Roman physicians wrote extensively about trepanation, describing it as one of the most effective treatments for various ailments of the head and mind. Medieval medical texts, many of them translations of Arabic works that preserved and expanded upon classical knowledge, provide detailed instructions for the operation, including careful descriptions of the anatomy involved and the specific techniques required to minimize the risk of permanent injury. As Brother Aldrich prepares his instruments, heating them over a brazier filled with glowing coals. You become acutely aware of the other occupants of the infirmary. In one corner, a middle-aged woman lies motionless beneath a rough woolen blanket, her head swathed in blood-stained bandages that suggest she has recently undergone the same procedure you are about to endure. Her breathing is shallow and irregular, and occasionally she emits soft moaning sounds that seem to come from somewhere very deep inside her. Another patient, a young man perhaps a few years older than yourself, sits propped against the stone wall, his eyes staring vacantly at nothing in particular. A circular patch of his scalp has been shaved clean, revealing an angry red wound that marks the site where Brother Aldrich's trepan has already done its work. When you catch his attention and attempt to ask about his experience, he simply stares at you with an expression of such profound emptiness that you quickly look away. The preparation for your own procedure begins with Brother Aldrich carefully shaving a section of your scalp, using a blade that he has honed to surgical sharpness. The scraping of metal against skin creates a sound that seems unnaturally loud in the stone chamber, and you find yourself focusing on this relatively minor discomfort in an attempt to avoid thinking about what is to come. The monk works with practiced efficiency, creating a perfectly circular area of bare skin roughly the size of a large coin. Medieval medical theory, Brother Aldrich explains as he works, holds that the human head contains 4 basic humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, whose proper balance is essential for both physical and mental health. When these humors become corrupted or trapped within the skull, they can cause everything from simple headaches to violent madness. The skull, being a closed vessel, provides no natural means for the escape of these poisonous substances, making surgical intervention the only practical solution. The actual drilling begins with a smaller instrument called a perforator, designed to create the initial hole through which the larger trepan can be inserted. Brother Aldrich positions the sharp point against your scalp with careful precision, explaining that proper placement is crucial to avoid damaging the major blood vessels that run just beneath the skin. The first penetration feels like nothing more than a sharp pinprick, but as he begins to apply pressure and rotate the instrument, the sensation quickly transforms into something far more disturbing. The sound of the perforator biting into your skull is unlike anything you have ever experienced. A grinding, scraping noise that seems to originate from inside your own head and resonates through your entire body. You can feel the vibrations traveling through your jawbone and down into your neck, creating a peculiar tingling sensation that makes your teeth ache. Brother Aldrich works steadily, pausing occasionally to brush away the fine bone dust that accumulates around the growing hole. Medieval treatises on surgery describe trepanation as requiring a delicate balance between speed and caution. The operator must work quickly enough to minimize the patient's suffering, but slowly enough to avoid accidentally penetrating too deeply and damaging the brain tissue beneath. Brother Aldrich demonstrates this balance perfectly, maintaining a steady rhythm that gradually deepens the hole while constantly monitoring for the subtle changes in resistance that indicate his approach to the inner table of the skull. The pain, which began as a sharp, localized sensation, gradually spreads outward from the drilling site until it feels as though your entire head is being slowly crushed in a giant's fist. Medieval physicians understood that such procedures would necessarily involve significant discomfort, and they developed various methods for helping patients endure the experience. Some recommended strong wine mixed with herbs like mandrake or henbane, substances that could dull the pain while creating a dreamlike state that made the procedure more bearable. Unfortunately, these same substances could also prove fatal if administered in excessive quantities, and many physicians preferred to rely on the patient's natural ability to withstand pain rather than risk accidentally poisoning them. Brother Aldrich has provided you with a leather strap to bite down on, explaining that this will help prevent you from accidentally biting through your own tongue during moments of particular intensity. As the perforator finally breaks through the inner table of your skull, you experience a sensation that defies easy description, a sudden release of pressure accompanied by a strange tingling feeling that seems to radiate outward from the hole in your head. Brother Aldrich peers closely at his work, using a small bronze probe to confirm that he has successfully penetrated the skull without damaging the underlying brain tissue. The sight that greets him, visible through the small opening he has created, is one that medieval physicians found endlessly fascinating. The surface of the brain, covered by a tough membrane called the dura mater, pulses gently with each beat of your heart, creating a rhythmic movement that seems to embody the very essence of life itself. Medieval texts describe this site with a mixture of medical fascination and religious awe, seeing in it evidence of the divine spark that animates all living creatures. Now comes the moment for the trepan itself to be employed. This larger instrument, with its circular cutting edge roughly the size of a large coin, is designed to remove a complete disc of bone from the skull, creating an opening large enough to allow corrupted humors to escape while providing access for further treatment if necessary. Brother Aldrich positions the trepan carefully, ensuring that it is perfectly centered over the hole created by the perforator. The trepan operates on a principle similar to that of a carpenter's drill, with a handle that allows the operator to apply rotational force while maintaining steady downward pressure. Medieval craftsmen who specialized in creating surgical instruments took great pride in their work, forging trepans with cutting edges so sharp and true that they could slice through bone like a knife through soft cheese. The finest examples, used by the most wealthy and prestigious physicians, were often decorated with intricate engravings and fitted with handles carved from exotic materials. As Brother Aldrich begins to turn the trepan, the grinding sound that filled the chamber during the initial drilling intensifies dramatically. The larger cutting surface creates vibrations that seem to shake your entire skull, and you find yourself gripping the sides of the wooden table with such force that your knuckles turn white. The monk works with methodical patience, turning the handle in steady, measured rotations while carefully monitoring the depth of the cut. Medieval surgical texts emphasize the importance of recognizing the subtle changes in resistance that indicate the trepan's progress through the various layers of the skull. The outer table, composed of dense cortical bone, requires significant force to penetrate. The middle layer, called the diploe, consists of spongy bone that cuts more easily, but can bleed profusely if proper care is not taken. The inner table, though thinner than the outer, presents its own challenges, as excessive pressure at this stage can drive bone fragments into the brain tissue below. The entire process, from the initial positioning of the trepan to the final removal of the bone disc, takes nearly 2 hours. Throughout this time, you remain conscious, experiencing every moment of the procedure with crystalline clarity. Medieval physicians believed that maintaining the patient's consciousness during trepanation was not merely unavoidable, but actually beneficial, as it allowed them to monitor for signs of brain damage by observing the patient's responses to questions and commands. As the trepan finally completes its circular cut, Brother Aldrich uses a small bronze lever to carefully pry the disc of bone away from your skull. The moment of its removal brings another strange sensation, a sudden rush of cool air against the surface of your brain that creates an almost euphoric feeling of relief. For the first time in weeks, the crushing pressure inside your head begins to subside, replaced by a peculiar lightness that makes you feel as though you might float away from the table. Brother Aldrich examines the exposed brain tissue with great interest, looking for signs of the corruption that medieval theory suggests should be visible in cases like yours. The surface appears normal to your modern understanding, but through the lens of medieval medical knowledge, the monk identifies various discolorations and irregularities that he interprets as evidence of humoral imbalance. He uses a small silver probe to test the responsiveness of different areas, noting with satisfaction that you can feel his touch and respond appropriately to his commands. The immediate aftermath of the procedure involves cleaning and dressing the wound in preparation for the long healing process ahead. Medieval physicians understood that the brain, though now exposed to the outside world, was remarkably resilient and could function normally even with a permanent opening in the skull. However, they also recognized that infection represented a constant and deadly threat, leading them to develop elaborate protocols for maintaining the cleanliness of trepanation wounds. Brother Aldrich begins by washing the exposed area with wine that has been boiled with various herbs known for their cleansing properties. The alcohol in the wine, though its antiseptic properties are not yet understood in modern terms, does provide some protection against infection. He then applies a mixture of honey and crushed herbs directly to the wound, covering it with a piece of fine linen that has been soaked in wine and allowed to dry. The honey, medieval physicians believed, possessed natural healing properties that could speed recovery while protecting against corruption. Modern medical knowledge confirms that honey does indeed have antibacterial properties, making it a surprisingly effective wound dressing for its time. The herbs mixed with the honey, including lavender, sage, and thyme, also possess antimicrobial compounds that would have provided additional protection, though medieval physicians valued them more for their supposed ability to balance the humors than for any understanding of their actual chemical properties. Over the coming days and weeks, you will need to return to the monastery infirmary regularly for Brother Aldrich to examine your wound and change your dressings. The healing process, he explains, typically takes several months, during which the brain tissue will gradually form a tough scar that can withstand normal activities. However, you will need to be extremely careful to avoid any blows to the head, as the absence of bone in that area leaves you permanently vulnerable to serious injury. The psychological impact of trepanation often proved as significant as the physical effects. Patients who underwent the procedure frequently reported vivid dreams, changes in personality, and altered perceptions of the world around them. Medieval physicians interpreted these phenomena as evidence that the operation had successfully restored proper humoral balance, allowing the patient's true nature to emerge from beneath the corruption that had previously clouded their mind. Some patients developed what modern psychology would recognize as post-traumatic stress, becoming unable to tolerate loud noises or sudden movements near their heads. Others reported feeling as though they could sense thoughts and emotions with unusual clarity, leading to their being regarded as possessing special wisdom or spiritual insight. A few unfortunate individuals experienced seizures or other neurological complications that medieval medicine was powerless to address. The economic impact of trepanation on families like yours was often devastating. The procedure itself represented a significant expense, but this was only the beginning of the financial burden. The extended recovery period meant months without income, while the ongoing medical care required regular payments to Brother Aldrich for his services. Many families found themselves forced to sell property or go into debt to cover these costs, creating financial hardships that could persist for years. Despite these challenges, medieval people generally viewed trepanation as a miraculous intervention that could restore hope in otherwise hopeless situations. The alternative to the procedure was often lifelong suffering or complete madness, making the risks seem acceptable compared to the prospect of no treatment at all. Families would sometimes travel hundreds of miles to consult with physicians who had reputations for particular skill in performing trepanation, willingly enduring the hardships of medieval travel for the chance of a cure. The social implications of having undergone trepanation were complex and varied depending on the outcome of the procedure. Successful cases, where the patient recovered and showed improvement in their condition, often gained considerable respect within their communities. People who had survived such a dramatic intervention were sometimes regarded as having been specially blessed by God, leading to their being consulted on matters requiring wisdom or judgment. However, patients who showed signs of permanent impairment after trepanation could find themselves marginalized or even ostracized by their communities. Medieval society had little understanding of brain injury and its effects, often interpreting cognitive or behavioral changes as moral failings rather than medical consequences. Some families chose to hide the fact that their relatives had undergone trepanation, fearing the social stigma that might result. Archaeological evidence from medieval cemeteries reveals that trepanation was far more common than historical records might suggest. Examination of skulls from this period shows that a surprisingly high percentage bear evidence of the procedure, and many display signs of healing that indicate the patients survived for months or years afterward. This suggests that medieval surgeons possessed greater skill than is often credited to them, though the overall mortality rate remained extremely high by modern standards. The instruments used for trepanation were often passed down through generations of physicians, becoming family heirlooms that embodied the accumulated knowledge and experience of their previous owners. Brother Aldrich's trepan, for example, was created by his own mentor decades earlier and has been used in hundreds of procedures over the years. Each operation has left subtle marks on the metal, creating a physical record of the countless patients who have undergone this ancient ritual of healing. As you begin your long recovery, lying in the dim infirmary surrounded by other patients in various stages of healing, You have time to contemplate the strange journey that brought you to this moment. The medieval world offers few certainties, and medical treatment often seems as likely to cause harm as to provide help. Yet, Brother Aldrich's intervention represents one of the most sophisticated surgical procedures available to your time, embodying centuries of accumulated knowledge and hard-won experience. The hole in your skull will never fully close, serving as a permanent reminder of this encounter with medieval medicine. In years to come, you will need to protect this vulnerable area from injury while learning to live with the psychological and social consequences of having undergone such a dramatic procedure. Whether the trepanation has actually cured your original headaches remains to be seen, but you have certainly been transformed by the experience in ways that will shape the rest of your life. The rhythm of daily life in the infirmary continues around you as other patients arrive and depart, each carrying their own stories of pain and hope. Some will recover and return to their normal lives, while others will succumb to infection or other complications. All of them, however, represent the medieval world's unwavering determination to find solutions to human suffering, even when those solutions involve risks that would seem unthinkable to modern sensibilities. As the sun sets over the medieval monastery where our previous tale unfolded, we turn our attention eastward, across the Mediterranean and into the heart of the Islamic world, where a very different approach to medicine was taking shape. While European physicians relied on ancient traditions and religious doctrine, Islamic scholars were pioneering methods of observation, experimentation, and systematic study that would revolutionize the healing arts for centuries to come. In the year 980 CE, in the prosperous city of Bokhara, nestled along the Silk Road trade routes that connected east and west, a remarkable child was beginning a journey that would transform our understanding of medicine and establish principles that remain fundamental to healing even today. Abu Ali al-Hussein ibn Sina, known to the Western world as Avicenna, would become perhaps the most influential physician in human history. Yet his path to greatness was marked by constant struggle, political upheaval, and personal sacrifice that reflected the turbulent times in which he lived. The house where young Ibn Sina spent his early years stood in one of Bokhara's most prestigious neighborhoods, its rooms filled with the soft murmur of scholarly conversation and the gentle rustling of manuscript pages. His father, Abdullah, served as a government administrator under the Samanid dynasty, and their home had become a gathering place for the intellectual elite of the Islamic world. Philosophers, mathematicians, astronomers, and physicians would arrive in the evening, settling into comfortable cushions arranged around low tables laden with dates, almonds, and glasses of sweet tea, their discussions continuing long into the night. From his earliest childhood, Ibn Sina displayed an intellectual curiosity that seemed almost supernatural to those around him. While other children his age were learning basic arithmetic and memorizing simple poems, he was absorbing complex philosophical arguments and grappling with mathematical concepts that challenged much older students. His memory appeared limitless. By the age of 10, he had committed the entire Quran to memory, not through rote repetition, but with a deep understanding of its linguistic subtleties and theological implications. The young scholar's education followed the traditional Islamic curriculum of his time, beginning with Arabic grammar and rhetoric, progressing through mathematics and astronomy, and eventually encompassing philosophy and natural sciences. However, Ibn Sina's approach to learning was anything but traditional. Rather than simply accepting the teachings of established authorities, he constantly questioned, challenged, and sought to verify everything he encountered through his own observation and reasoning. His first encounter with medicine came when he was barely 14 years old, studying under Abu Abdullah al-Natili, a philosopher who had achieved considerable fame throughout the Islamic world. Al-Natili had intended to provide the boy with a solid grounding in Aristotelian logic and metaphysics, but he soon discovered that his student possessed insights that surpassed his own understanding. Within months, their relationship had evolved from teacher and pupil to something more resembling a collaboration between equals. It was Al-Natili who first introduced Ibn Sina to the medical writings of Galen, the ancient Greek physician whose theories dominated medical practice throughout both the Islamic world and medieval Europe. However, rather than simply accepting Galen's teachings as immutable truth, Ibn Sina began to notice inconsistencies and contradictions in the ancient texts. He started seeking out patience to observe, comparing what he read in books with what he could see with his own eyes. The turning point in Ibn Sina's medical career came when he was 16 years old, still technically a student, but already displaying knowledge that surpassed many practicing physicians. The Samanid ruler, Ibn Mansur, had fallen seriously ill with a condition that had puzzled the court's most experienced doctors for months. The patient suffered from severe digestive problems accompanied by fever, weakness, and a general decline that seemed to resist all conventional treatments. The court physicians had followed standard procedure, examining the patient's urine for color and consistency, checking his pulse according to established patterns, and prescribing treatments based on the classical theory of humoral balance. They had attempted bloodletting to reduce excess heat, administered purgatives to cleanse corrupted matter from the body, and prescribed various herbal compounds intended to restore proper balance among the four humors. Yet despite their efforts, the ruler's condition continued to deteriorate. When Ibn Sina was finally granted permission to examine the patient, he brought an approach that was revolutionary for its time. Rather than relying solely on traditional diagnostic methods, he conducted what would today be recognized as a comprehensive physical examination. He observed the patient's skin color and texture, noting subtle changes that others had overlooked. He examined the eyes, mouth, and throat with careful attention to detail. Most importantly, he spent considerable time listening to the patient's own description of his symptoms, treating subjective experience as valuable diagnostic information rather than dismissing it as unreliable. Ibn Sina's examination revealed several important clues that previous physicians had missed. The patient's pulse, when checked at different times of day and under varying conditions, displayed patterns that suggested specific internal dysfunctions. His urine, analyzed not just for obvious characteristics, but for subtle variations in scent and consistency, provided additional diagnostic information. Even the patient's breath and body odor offered insights into the nature of his internal imbalance. Based on these observations, Ibn Sina developed a treatment plan that diverged significantly from conventional practice. Instead of the harsh purgatives and bloodletting favored by his colleagues, he prescribed a carefully regulated diet designed to support the body's natural healing processes. He recommended specific exercises and rest patterns intended to restore proper circulation and digestive function. Most importantly, he prepared a series of medications using precise formulations that he adjusted based on the patient's daily responses to treatment. The medications themselves represented a significant innovation in Islamic medicine. Rather than relying on traditional compound remedies whose compositions had been established by ancient authorities, Ibn Sina created formulations based on his understanding of how individual ingredients might interact with specific disease processes. He tested different combinations and dosages, carefully documenting the results and modifying his approach based on what he observed. Within weeks of beginning Ibn Sina's treatment, the ruler showed marked improvement. His digestive problems subsided, his fever broke, and his strength began to return. News of this remarkable recovery spread rapidly throughout the Islamic world, establishing Ibn Sina's reputation as a physician of extraordinary skill while he was still in his teens. More importantly, it demonstrated the effectiveness of his systematic, observation-based approach to medical practice. The grateful ruler rewarded Ibn Sina with access to the royal library, one of the finest collections of manuscripts in the Islamic world. For a young scholar with Ibn Sina's intellectual appetite, this gift was more precious than gold or jewels. The library contained works in Arabic, Persian, Greek, and Sanskrit, representing the accumulated knowledge of multiple civilizations. Here were the complete works of Aristotle, the medical treatises of Hippocrates and Galen, mathematical texts from India, astronomical observations from Persia, and countless other treasures of human learning. Ibn Sina approached this vast collection with characteristic intensity, often spending entire nights reading by oil lamp until his eyes ached and his back cramped from bending over manuscripts. He didn't simply read these works. He analyzed, compared, and synthesized them, looking for connections and contradictions that might lead to new insights. His method involved creating detailed notes and commentary, developing his own systematic approach to organizing and understanding the knowledge he encountered. However, The political stability that had enabled Ibn Sina's early success was not destined to last. In 999 CE, the Samanid dynasty fell to the Ghaznavids, and the young physician found himself in an increasingly precarious position. His association with the former rulers made him suspect in the eyes of the new regime, and political winds began to shift in ways that threatened not just his career, but potentially his life. The fall of the Samanids marked the beginning of a period of wandering that would define the rest of Ibn Sina's career. Like many intellectuals of his time, he was forced to seek patronage from various rulers across the Islamic world, moving from court to court as political circumstances changed. This nomadic existence, while disruptive and often dangerous, exposed him to medical traditions and practices from across the known world, enriching his understanding and contributing to the comprehensive nature of his later works. His first refuge was the court of the Khwarezmshahs at Gurganj, where he encountered other scholars who had also fled political upheaval. This community of displaced intellectuals created an atmosphere of intense scholarly collaboration, with debates and discussions that often continued from sunset to dawn. Among Ibn Sina's colleagues was al-Biruni, the great astronomer and mathematician, whose rigorous approach to scientific observation influenced Ibn Sina's own methodology. It was during this period of exile and uncertainty that Ibn Sina began work on his greatest achievement, the Al-Canon fi al-Tib, or Canon of Medicine. This monumental work represented an attempt to synthesize all known medical knowledge into a systematic framework that could serve both as a practical guide for physicians and as a theoretical foundation for understanding health and disease. The project would occupy him for decades, growing and evolving as his experience and understanding deepened. The canon was structured as 5 books, each addressing different aspects of medical knowledge and practice. The first book established general principles of medicine, including anatomy, physiology, and the theoretical foundations for understanding health and disease. The second book cataloged simple drugs and their properties, providing detailed information about hundreds of medicinal substances from across the known world. The third book examined diseases of specific organs and body systems, offering systematic approaches to diagnosis and treatment. The fourth book addressed systemic diseases and surgical procedures, while the fifth provided comprehensive formulations for compound medications. What distinguished the canon from earlier medical texts was Ibn Sina's insistence on logical organization and empirical verification. Traditional medical works often mixed practical remedies with theoretical speculation, religious beliefs, and folklore, making it difficult for physicians to separate reliable information from mere tradition. Ibn Sina imposed rigorous standards of evidence and reasoning, rejecting theories that couldn't be supported by observation and emphasizing the importance of systematic clinical experience. The writing of the canon took place under extraordinary circumstances, as Ibn Sina continued his wandering existence, moving from court to court in search of political stability and scholarly resources. He worked on the manuscript in palace libraries and humble lodgings, in times of prosperity and periods of hardship, often by candlelight after completing his daily duties as a court physician and advisor. His assistant and biographer, al-Juzjani, described the process as requiring almost superhuman dedication and endurance. The physical demands of Ibn Sina's lifestyle began to take a serious toll on his health as he entered middle age. The constant travel, irregular meals, and stress of political uncertainty contributed to digestive problems that would plague him for the rest of his life. He suffered from chronic headaches, probably caused by long hours of reading and writing in poor light. Most seriously, he developed what appears to have been kidney disease, possibly related to his practice of testing medications on himself, a dangerous but necessary aspect of medieval pharmaceutical research. Despite these health problems, Ibn Sina's intellectual productivity remained extraordinary. In addition to the canon, he produced works on philosophy, astronomy, mathematics, and natural sciences that would influence Islamic thought for centuries. His philosophical writings attempted to reconcile Aristotelian philosophy with Islamic theology, creating sophisticated systems that addressed fundamental questions about the nature of reality, knowledge, and human existence. The political instability that forced Ibn Sina to wander also enriched his medical knowledge by exposing him to healing traditions from across the Islamic world. In each region where he sought refuge, he encountered local physicians, herbalists, and healers whose practices reflected centuries of accumulated experience. He carefully evaluated these traditions, incorporating effective techniques into his growing understanding while discarding practices that couldn't be verified through observation. Ibn Sina's approach to mental illness was particularly advanced for his time, reflecting both his philosophical sophistication and his clinical experience. While most medieval physicians viewed mental disorders as either divine punishment or demonic possession, Ibn Sina recognized them as medical conditions requiring careful diagnosis and treatment. He described various forms of depression, anxiety, and psychosis with remarkable accuracy, developing treatment approaches that emphasize compassion, environmental modification, and careful observation of patient responses. His surgical knowledge, though limited by the practical constraints of his time, demonstrated sophisticated understanding of anatomy and wound care. Although court physicians rarely performed operations themselves, surgery was often considered beneath their dignity. Ibn Sina's writings reveal detailed knowledge of surgical procedures, suggesting either direct experience or careful observation of surgical practice. He described cataract extraction, kidney stone removal, and various emergency procedures with precision that indicates thorough familiarity with surgical technique. The final phase of Ibn Sina's career was spent in Isfahan, where he served as vizier to the ruler Ala al-Dawla. This position provided him with greater political stability and access to excellent libraries, but it also involved him more deeply in the dangerous world of medieval politics. When Isfahan came under siege by the Ghaznavid ruler Mahmud, Ibn Sina found himself trapped in a city under constant threat of conquest and destruction. It was during this siege that Ibn Sina's declining health finally overwhelmed his extraordinary constitution. According to al-Jajani's detailed account, he attempted to treat his kidney disease with increasingly powerful medications, essentially conducting dangerous medical experiments on himself even as he lay dying. His final illness became a testament to his lifelong commitment to empirical medicine. Even facing death, he continued to observe, test, and document his responses to treatment. Ibn Sina's death in 1037, at the age of 56, marked the end of one of the most remarkable careers in the history of medicine. His canon would become the standard medical textbook throughout both the Islamic world and medieval Europe, remaining in use at European universities well into the Renaissance. His philosophical works helped shape Islamic intellectual tradition while providing crucial links between ancient Greek thought and medieval European scholasticism. Perhaps most importantly, Ibn Sina established methodological principles that remain fundamental to medical practice today. His emphasis on systematic observation, logical reasoning, and empirical testing created a foundation for scientific medicine that transcended the specific theories and treatments of his time. His insistence that medical knowledge must be based on evidence rather than authority challenged physicians to think critically and observe carefully, establishing standards that continue to guide medical research and practice. The legacy of Ibn Sina extends far beyond his specific contributions to medical knowledge. He demonstrated that intellectual excellence could flourish even under conditions of political instability and personal hardship, that systematic study could unlock the secrets of natural phenomena, and that human reason, properly applied, could lead to understanding that improved the conditions of life for countless people. His career embodies the best aspirations of medieval Islamic civilization, representing a golden age when scholarship, scientific inquiry, and practical application combine to advance human knowledge and well-being. As we reflect on Ibn Sina's remarkable journey from the libraries of Bokhara to the courts of Isfahan, we see embodied in his life the eternal human quest to understand and alleviate suffering. His story reminds us that even in times of great upheaval and uncertainty, dedicated individuals can make contributions that echo through the centuries, establishing foundations upon which future generations can build. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, consider the debt we owe to this remarkable physician whose systematic approach to healing helped establish the scientific foundations of modern medicine. As we drift away from the bustling courts and libraries of medieval Islamic civilization, our journey through time carries us even further back to an age when the Mediterranean was the beating heart of classical civilization. Here, Beneath the azure waters that have witnessed the rise and fall of empires, lay hidden one of history's most extraordinary secrets, a discovery that would challenge everything scholars believed about the technological capabilities of the ancient world. Picture, if you will, the rocky coastline of Antikythera, a small Greek island whose name most people had never heard until a chance encounter between sponge divers and the remnants of an ancient shipwreck would rewrite our understanding of classical antiquity. The year was 1900, and a team of experienced divers from the island of Simi were working the waters off this remote coast, seeking the natural sponges that had sustained their families for generations. These were men accustomed to the dangers of deep water diving, descending to depths that would challenge even modern equipment while wearing nothing more than weighted shoes and copper helmets connected to the surface by air hoses. Their work required extraordinary courage and skill, as a single mistake could mean death in the crushing depths of the Mediterranean. On this particular October day, rough seas had forced them to seek shelter near Antikythera, and it was during this unplanned stop that diver Elias Stadiatis made a discovery that would puzzle archaeologists for more than a century. Descending to a depth of nearly 150 feet, Stadiatis found himself swimming over what appeared to be a field of marble statues scattered across the seafloor. The sight was so unexpected and otherworldly that his first report to the surface, delivered in the excited tones of a man who had seen something extraordinary, described bodies of men and horses lying on the bottom of the sea. His captain, initially skeptical of what sounded like the ravings of a nitrogen-intoxicated diver, descended to verify the report and confirmed that they had indeed discovered the remains of an ancient shipwreck. What the divers had found was a Roman cargo vessel that had sunk sometime between 87 and 50 BCE, carrying a treasure trove of artistic and luxury goods bound for Rome. The ship's cargo told the story of the Roman elite's insatiable appetite for Greek culture and craftsmanship. Marble statues that had once graced temples and public spaces, bronze figurines of exquisite artistry, jewelry that sparkled even after 2 millennia beneath the waves, coins bearing the images of long-dead rulers, and amphorae that had once contained the finest wines of the ancient world. The recovery operation that followed was a remarkable feat of early underwater archaeology, though it was conducted with methods that would horrify modern conservators. Using primitive diving equipment and working under conditions of extreme danger, the sponge divers spent months bringing artifacts to the surface. Several divers lost their lives in the process, succumbing to the bends or drowning in equipment failures, making their sacrifice a poignant reminder of the human cost often paid in the pursuit of knowledge about our past. Among the treasures brought to the surface were several corroded lumps of bronze that seemed utterly unremarkable compared to the artistic masterpieces surrounding them. These unprepossessing objects were transported to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens along with the rest of the recovered artifacts, where they were cataloged and placed in storage while scholars focused their attention on the more obviously valuable items. For months, these bronze masses sat ignored in museum storage, their true significance hidden beneath layers of marine corrosion and the accumulated mineral deposits of 20 centuries. It wasn't until 1902 that archaeologist Valerios Stais, while examining the stored artifacts, noticed something that would change his life and ultimately revolutionize our understanding of ancient technology. Embedded in one of the corroded bronze lumps, clearly visible once he knew where to look, was what appeared to be a precision-cut gear wheel. The implications of this observation were so profound and so contrary to accepted scholarly wisdom about ancient capabilities that his colleagues initially dismissed his findings as impossible. The early 20th century scholarly establishment held firm beliefs about the progression of human technological development. Complex mechanical devices, they insisted, were innovations of the medieval period at the earliest, developed in European monasteries as monks sought to create more accurate timekeeping devices for their religious observances. The idea that Greeks living more than 2,000 years ago could have created intricate clockwork mechanisms seemed to violate everything that was known about the history of technology. This resistance to Stais's observations reflected deeper assumptions about the relationship between ancient and modern civilizations. The prevailing view portrayed technological development as a linear progression from primitive ancient techniques to sophisticated modern capabilities. According to this narrative, The ancients, despite their achievements in art, literature, and philosophy, lacked the engineering sophistication necessary to create complex mechanical devices. Such technology, it was believed, required centuries of gradual development that had occurred entirely within the context of medieval and Renaissance European civilization. But Stays persisted in his investigation, gradually convincing other scholars to take a closer look at the mysterious bronze fragments. As more researchers became involved in studying the objects, it became increasingly clear that something extraordinary lay hidden beneath the marine corrosion. The gear wheels that Stays had first observed were clearly intentional mechanical components, cut with precision and assembled according to sophisticated engineering principles that seemed to anticipate developments in clockmaking by more than a millennium. The breakthrough in understanding came in the 1950s when British science historian Derek J. de Sala Price began a systematic study of what had come to be known as the Antikythera mechanism. Price brought to the investigation both advanced analytical techniques and a mind unencumbered by preconceptions about what ancient people could or could not have achieved. Using X-ray photography, he was able to peer through the layers of corrosion that had hidden the mechanism's true nature for so long. What Price discovered defied every assumption about ancient technological capabilities. The mechanism contained at least 37 interlocking bronze gear wheels, arranged in sophisticated trains that could perform complex astronomical calculations with remarkable precision. The device had originally been housed in a wooden case about the size of a modern shoebox, with bronze dials on the front and back that displayed the results of its calculations. Most remarkable of all, the gear ratios had been calculated with mathematical precision to match the orbital periods of celestial bodies known to ancient astronomers. Price's initial findings, published in the 1970s, sent shockwaves through both the archaeological and scientific communities. Here was physical evidence of a level of technological sophistication that simply wasn't supposed to exist in the ancient world. The precision required to cut the gears, the mathematical knowledge needed to calculate the proper ratios, and the engineering skill necessary to assemble such a complex device all pointed to capabilities that historians had never attributed to ancient civilizations. The gear trains within the mechanism were works of extraordinary precision, with teeth cut so accurately that modern horologists expressed amazement at the quality of the workmanship. Each gear had been carefully designed to mesh perfectly with its neighbors, creating mechanical relationships that could translate the rotation of a single input handle into complex calculations involving multiple astronomical cycles. The bronze alloy used in the gears had been carefully formulated to provide the optimal combination of strength, durability, and workability, suggesting sophisticated metallurgical knowledge. As research techniques improved over the following decades, new layers of complexity continued to emerge from the corroded remains of the mechanism. High-resolution computed tomography, developed in the 1990s, allowed researchers to create detailed three-dimensional models of the internal structure without further damaging the fragile artifacts. These scans revealed additional gear trains that previous investigators had been unable to detect, suggesting that the mechanism was even more sophisticated than Price had originally realized. The front dial of the mechanism displayed what appears to have been a representation of the zodiac, with pointers that could track the positions of the sun, moon, and possibly the known planets as they moved through their celestial cycles. The device could predict eclipses with remarkable accuracy, calculate the timing of Olympic Games, and track the complex 19-year cycle known as the Metonic cycle, which reconciles solar and lunar calendars. Some researchers believe that additional components may have tracked the positions of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, though the fragmentary nature of the surviving remains makes this difficult to confirm. The back of the mechanism contained dials that displayed lunar months and could predict the occurrence of solar and lunar eclipses years in advance. The sophistication of these calculations required understanding of astronomical phenomena that wouldn't be fully grasped by European scholars until the Renaissance. The mechanism incorporated corrections for the elliptical orbit of the moon using a pin-and-slot device that created the first known example of a variable gear ratio in mechanical engineering, an innovation that wouldn't appear again until the development of sophisticated clockwork in medieval Europe. Perhaps even more intriguing than the mechanical complexity are the inscriptions that cover virtually every surface of the device. Written in ancient Greek using letters only 1.2 millimeters high, these inscriptions provide a wealth of information about the mechanism's construction, operation, and purpose. The text includes detailed operating instructions, astronomical data, and what appears to be a comprehensive manual explaining the theoretical principles underlying the device's design. The inscriptions reveal that the mechanism was not simply a calculator, but rather a sophisticated analog computer capable of modeling the complex motions of celestial bodies. The text demonstrates advanced understanding of astronomical theory and suggests that such devices may have been more common in the ancient world than the survival of a single example might indicate. References to specific geographical locations and astronomical phenomena provide clues about where and when the mechanism was created, pointing to the island of Rhodes as a likely center of production. Rhodes in the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE was indeed a renowned center of astronomical research and mechanical engineering. The island's location at the crossroads of Mediterranean trade routes made it a natural gathering place for scholars and craftsmen from across the Greek world. The famous Colossus of Rhodes, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, demonstrated the island's reputation for ambitious engineering projects, while its schools attracted students interested in mathematics, astronomy, and natural philosophy. The level of craftsmanship evident in the Antikythera mechanism suggests the work of highly skilled artisans working within an established tradition of precision metalworking. The gear teeth were cut with extraordinary accuracy. The bronze components were finished to tolerances that rival modern manufacturing standards, and the overall design demonstrates sophisticated understanding of mechanical principles. This level of expertise could only have developed within a context where such skills were valued, supported, and passed down through generations of craftsmen. Recent research has identified several historical figures who possessed the knowledge and skills necessary to create such a device. Hipparchus, the great astronomer who worked on Rhodes in the 2nd century BCE, developed many of the astronomical theories and observational techniques that would have been required. His precise measurements of celestial phenomena and his mathematical innovations in spherical trigonometry provided the theoretical foundation for the calculations embedded in the mechanism's gear trains. Apollonius of Perga, known for his work on conic sections and geometric theory, could have provided the mathematical insights needed to design the complex gear trains. His understanding of geometric relationships and mathematical modeling would have been essential for translating astronomical observations into mechanical analogs. Similarly, the engineer Ctesibius of Alexandria, famous for his hydraulic devices and mechanical inventions, possessed the practical skills needed to translate theoretical concepts into working mechanisms. Some scholars have suggested connections to the legendary Archimedes, the great mathematician and inventor of the 3rd century BCE. Ancient sources describe Archimedes as having created mechanical devices capable of demonstrating celestial phenomena, though no examples of his work survive. The Roman writer Cicero specifically mentions visiting a device created by Archimedes that could show the motions of the sun, moon, and planets, raising tantalizing questions about whether the Antikythera mechanism might represent a later development of Archimedes' innovations. The discovery of the mechanism has also illuminated the broader context of technological development in the ancient world. For decades, historians had assumed that complex mechanical technology essentially disappeared after the fall of the Roman Empire and wasn't redeveloped until the medieval period. The Antikythera mechanism suggests instead that sophisticated engineering traditions flourished during the Hellenistic period, raising questions about what other technological achievements may have been lost to history. Archaeological evidence from other Mediterranean sites has begun to support this revised understanding of ancient technological capability. Excavations have uncovered precision-made bronze components, gear wheels, and other mechanical devices that suggest the Antikythera mechanism was part of a broader tradition of sophisticated engineering. Roman sources describe various mechanical devices used for entertainment, calculation, and practical purposes, many of which would have required the same types of precision manufacturing demonstrated in the Greek mechanism. Modern attempts to reconstruct the Antikythera mechanism have revealed the extraordinary challenges that ancient craftsmen would have faced in creating such a device. Contemporary reconstructions, even using modern tools and techniques, have required months or years of painstaking work. The gears must be cut with tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters. The bronze alloy must be carefully formulated to provide optimal working properties, and the assembly requires precision that tests the limits of even modern manufacturing capabilities. Ancient craftsmen, working with hand tools and primitive measuring devices, would have faced even greater challenges. The successful creation of the original mechanism represents an achievement in precision engineering that rivals anything produced before the Industrial Revolution. Each component would have required individual attention, with craftsmen developing specialized techniques for cutting gears, shaping bronze, and achieving the precise fits necessary for smooth mechanical operation. The mechanism's design also reveals sophisticated understanding of manufacturing and engineering principles that wouldn't be formally articulated until much later periods. The use of differential gears to combine multiple inputs, the implementation of variable gear ratios to model non-uniform celestial motions, and the integration of multiple computational functions into a single compact device all demonstrate engineering sophistication that was supposedly unknown in the ancient world. Perhaps most remarkably, recent analysis has revealed that the mechanism incorporated built-in error correction features. The ancient engineers recognized that small imperfections in gear cutting and assembly could accumulate over time, leading to increasingly inaccurate predictions. They incorporated mechanical features that would automatically compensate for these errors, maintaining computational accuracy even after extended use. This level of sophistication in engineering design suggests a mature technological tradition with deep understanding of both theoretical principles and practical implementation challenges. The social and economic context that made such achievements possible remains partially mysterious, but the mechanism's existence suggests a level of wealth, education, and technical sophistication that historians are only beginning to appreciate. The creation of such a device would have required significant financial resources, access to specialized knowledge and skills, and a social environment that valued scientific inquiry and technological innovation. The ancient Mediterranean world, it seems, was capable of supporting technological development of remarkable sophistication. As you settle deeper into sleep tonight, consider the profound implications of this ancient computer, waiting silent and corroded on the Mediterranean seafloor for 2 millennia before revealing its secrets to modern science. The Antikythera mechanism stands as a powerful reminder that our ancestors achieved far more than we have often credited them with accomplishing, and that the path of human technological development has been far more complex and fascinating than simple linear narratives might suggest. Hidden beneath the waves, this remarkable device preserved evidence of a lost world of knowledge and skill, waiting patiently to revolutionize our understanding of what the ancients were capable of achieving. As our journey through time carries us from the technological marvels of ancient Greece into the heart of medieval Europe, we find ourselves in a world where power took on very different forms, yet required no less sophistication to maintain. The year is 1170. And in the magnificent palace of Poitiers, the most powerful woman in Europe is beginning another day in a life that epitomizes both the extraordinary privileges and crushing responsibilities of medieval royalty. The first pale rays of dawn filter through stained glass windows that transform simple sunlight into cascades of ruby, sapphire, and emerald, painting the stone walls of Eleanor of Aquitaine's private solar with patterns that shift and dance as the sun climbs higher. These windows, each one a masterwork of medieval craftsmanship imported at enormous expense from the finest glaziers in Paris, serve as more than mere decoration. They proclaim to all who enter that this chamber belongs to someone whose wealth and power extend across continents. Eleanor awakens not to the harsh realities that govern the lives of her subjects, but to a world of carefully orchestrated luxury that reflects her position as Duchess of Aquitaine, former Queen of France, current Queen of England, and arguably the most influential political figure of her age. At 48, she remains a formidable presence whose very awakening sets in motion an elaborate choreography of servants, advisors, and courtiers whose fortunes depend entirely on their ability to anticipate and fulfill her every need. The bedchamber itself serves as a statement of power that would be immediately understood by any medieval observer. The massive bed, raised on a platform that literally elevates Eleanor above those who serve her, has been constructed from carved oak imported from the ancient forests of Normandy. Every surface bears intricate decorations that incorporate her personal heraldic symbols, the lions of Aquitaine intertwined with the lilies of France and the leopards of England, proclaiming her connections to three of Europe's most powerful dynasties. The mattress beneath her represents luxury that most of her subjects could never imagine experiencing. While common people sleep on straw pallets that must be frequently replaced due to infestations of vermin, Eleanor rests on goose down so fine it seems to cradle her body like a cloud. The sheets that cover this marvel are woven from linen so delicate it appears almost translucent, each thread spun and woven by master craftsmen whose skills have been refined through generations of service to nobility. The coverlets that warm Eleanor through the cool morning air are themselves works of art that could serve as diplomatic gifts between kingdoms. Silk brocades woven with threads of actual gold tell the story of her lineage in patterns that any educated observer could read like a book. These textiles have traveled incredible distances to reach her chamber. Silk from the workshops of Damascus, gold thread from the mines of Nubia, dyes from exotic plants that grow only in distant corners of the known world. As Eleanor stirs from sleep, her movement triggers a carefully rehearsed ritual that has been refined through decades of court protocol. Her first lady-in-waiting, Marie de Champagne, her own daughter from her first marriage to Louis VII of France, approaches with the reverence that medieval society demands be shown to royalty. Marie's very presence in this role demonstrates the complex political calculations that govern Eleanor's court, as the appointment of her daughter serves both to honor family bonds and to maintain careful balance among the competing noble factions that surround the throne. 3 additional ladies-in-waiting attend Eleanor's awakening, each with specific responsibilities that have been established through generations of courtly tradition. One carries a silver basin filled with water that has been heated to the precise temperature Eleanor prefers and scented with rose petals gathered from the palace gardens at dawn. Another bears towels of linen so fine they represent more wealth than most peasant families will accumulate in their lifetimes. The third holds a selection of soaps made from olive oil and ash, perfumed with lavender from the fields of Provence that form part of Eleanor's vast territorial domains. The morning ablutions that follow are not private affairs, but carefully choreographed ceremonies that reinforce the social hierarchies upon which medieval society depends. Every gesture, every moment of the washing ritual, serves to demonstrate Eleanor's otherworldly status, while providing opportunities for her attendants to display their devotion and compete for royal favor. The water used to cleanse her skin has been purified through processes known only to the most skilled servants, while the soaps that touch her body cost more than most people earn in months of labor. Eleanor's morning dressing ritual reveals the complex semiotics of medieval royal fashion, where every garment selection communicates specific messages about status, political allegiances, and intentions for the day ahead. Her undergarments, invisible to observers but no less significant for their concealment, consist of a linen chemise that extends from neck to ankle, embroidered with silk thread and patterns that reference her Aquitanian heritage. The quality of this hidden luxury serves as a private affirmation of her status, worn against skin that has never known the coarse fabrics endured by common people. Over this foundation goes a silk blyout, the form-fitting dress that has become fashionable among the highest levels of nobility. The garment's color, a golden hue achieved through the use of precious saffron, literally demonstrates Eleanor's ability to wear wealth upon her body. Saffron, harvested from crocus flowers that bloom for only a few days each year, requires the labor of hundreds of workers to produce even small quantities of dye. A single dress dyed this shade represents more value than most villages see in an entire harvest season. The process of dressing Eleanor involves the careful arrangement of multiple layers, each carrying its own significance within the complex language of medieval court fashion. Her sleeves, detachable and interchangeable to suit different occasions, are selected based on the day's planned activities. Silk sleeves indicate indoor courtly functions where delicate beauty takes precedence over practicality, while more substantial materials suggest plans for outdoor activities like hunting or riding that require greater durability. Perhaps most significant is the selection of Eleanor's jewelry, each piece chosen not merely for aesthetic appeal, but for its political symbolism and diplomatic implications. Her crown, when worn for formal occasions, incorporates gemstones that tell the story of her territorial control. Sapphires from the mountains of central France, pearls from the coastal waters of Aquitaine, garnets that reference her connections to Spanish nobility through complex marriage alliances. Her rings bear the seals of her various titles and offices, each one capable of authenticating documents and commands that carry legal weight across vast distances. As Eleanor completes her morning preparations, her solar begins to fill with the petitioners, advisors, and courtiers who have been waiting since before dawn for the opportunity to approach royal power. The morning audience represents one of the fundamental rituals of medieval governance, where the personal accessibility of the ruler demonstrates connection to subjects while simultaneously emphasizing the vast gulf that separates royal from common society. The petitioners who seek Eleanor's attention present a carefully curated cross-section of the diverse territories and interests under her control. A delegation of merchants from Bordeaux requests her protection for a new trading venture that will bring exotic spices from the Levant through ports under her authority, offering her a percentage of profits that could fund months of court extravagance. Their proposal demonstrates the international scope of medieval commerce and Eleanor's position at the center of trade networks that span from the Atlantic Ocean to the eastern Mediterranean. Abbots from monasteries scattered across Aquitaine present requests for endowments and privileges, each supplication accompanied by illuminated manuscripts whose artistic beauty serves as both gift and demonstration of their institution's cultural value. These religious leaders seek not merely financial support, but political protection for their communities, recognition of their rights, and confirmation of privileges that can protect monastic properties from seizure by aggressive nobles or foreign invaders. Minor nobles arrive with disputes that require royal arbitration, inheritance conflicts that could affect the loyalty of entire regions, marriage negotiations that might create or destroy political alliances, territorial disagreements that could escalate into armed conflicts if not resolved through Eleanor's diplomatic intervention. Each case requires not merely legal knowledge, but sophisticated understanding of the personal relationships, historical grievances, and political calculations that underlie medieval society. Eleanor's breakfast, served while she conducts these morning audiences, reflects both the abundance available to medieval royalty and the complex international networks that supply her table with luxuries from across the known world. Her bread, baked fresh each morning by a team of specialized bakers, is made from wheat flour so fine and white it seems almost supernatural compared to the dark, coarse bread that sustains her subjects. The process of achieving such purity requires multiple stages of sifting and processing that add enormously to the cost, while creating a product that serves as an immediate symbol of elevated status. The meat that graces Eleanor's morning table tells stories of careful planning and enormous expense. Venison from her private hunting preserves has been aged and prepared according to techniques that enhance both flavor and prestige. Fresh fish, transported alive in specially designed carts from coastal waters, arrives at her table still bearing the taste of the sea. Fowl raised in aviaries maintained specifically for the royal household have been fed diets designed to produce meat of exceptional tenderness and flavor. The spices that season Eleanor's food represent perhaps the most dramatic demonstration of her international reach and financial resources. Pepper, literally worth its weight in silver, arrives through Venetian merchants who maintain trading posts from Constantinople to Alexandria. Cinnamon and nutmeg, so precious they are measured grain by grain, come from Southeast Asian sources through chains of intermediaries that span continents. Even her salt, seemingly commonplace, is solar evaporated sea salt from specific coastal regions renowned for superior quality rather than the rock salt available to common people. Eleanor's wine selection demonstrates the sophistication that medieval nobility had achieved in matters of gastronomy and agriculture. As Duchess of Aquitaine, she controls some of Europe's finest wine-producing regions, and her cellars contain vintages from specific vineyards whose reputations are already becoming legendary. Her morning wine, lightly spiced with honey and herbs, serves both nutritional and medicinal purposes according to medieval medical theory, which holds that properly prepared wine aids digestion while maintaining the balance of bodily humors essential for health. Following breakfast, Eleanor's attention turns to the administrative demands that govern territories stretching from Scotland to the Pyrenees. Her morning correspondence, brought by messengers who have ridden through the night from across her domains, requires responses that demonstrate detailed knowledge of local conditions and the ability to make decisions affecting thousands of lives. Each letter represents hours of travel, considerable expense, and urgent matters that cannot wait for slower forms of communication. Letters from her son Richard, currently campaigning against rebellious nobles in Poitou, require careful consideration of military strategy, resource allocation, and political implications that could affect the stability of her entire realm. Richard's requests for additional troops, siege equipment, and financial support must be balanced against other demands on her resources while considering the broader political ramifications of her decisions. Communications from her administrators in England demand responses to judicial appeals, tax collection disputes, and territorial conflicts that require her personal attention despite the hundreds of miles that separate her from those distant lands. The complexity of governing territories that span different languages, legal traditions, and cultural practices requires extraordinary skill and delegation while maintaining ultimate authority over crucial decisions. Diplomatic correspondence from other European courts requires perhaps the most delicate handling, as these letters often concern marriage alliances, territorial agreements, and the intricate web of feudal obligations that bind medieval nobility together. A poorly worded response could inadvertently create enemies, while skillful diplomacy might secure advantages that benefit her realm for generations. The physical act of creating these responses reveals another dimension of medieval luxury and sophistication. Eleanor's scriptorium, staffed by highly educated clerks trained in the finest monasteries of Europe, produces documents whose calligraphy and illumination rival the most beautiful religious manuscripts. These scribes possess skills that represent years of training and considerable expense, their education in Latin, vernacular languages, and the complex protocols of diplomatic correspondence making them valuable servants whose loyalty must be carefully maintained. Eleanor's personal seal, carved from precious stone and set in gold, transforms each document into an artifact of considerable intrinsic value. The seal's design incorporates symbols of her authority and lineage, its impression in colored wax serving as legal validation that carries weight throughout medieval Europe. The parchment itself, made from specially prepared animal skins, represents significant expense, while the inks used for writing and illumination contain exotic materials like crushed lapis lazuli and gold leaf that cost more than many families' annual income. As the morning progresses toward noon, Eleanor's court transforms into a different kind of theater, one focused on cultural refinement and intellectual achievement rather than pure political power. This transition marks the beginning of what will become known as the courts of love, sophisticated gatherings where troubadours, poets, and scholars present their latest works for royal approval and patronage. These sessions represent Eleanor's personal contribution to medieval culture, her conscious effort to create an environment where artistic achievement can flourish under royal protection. The troubadours who attend Eleanor's court represent a revolutionary cultural development that she has personally fostered and shaped. These poet-musicians, many composing in the Occitan language of southern France, have created entirely new forms of artistic expression that celebrate refined love, noble behavior, and cultural sophistication. Their songs, accompanied by instruments imported from across the Mediterranean world, create an atmosphere of otherworldly beauty that distinguishes Eleanor's court from the rougher, more militaristic environments that characterize other medieval centers of power. The content of these performances reflects Eleanor's profound influence on medieval culture and literature. The concept of courtly love, which will influence European literature for centuries, is being refined and codified through the interactions between Eleanor and her cultural protégés. The idea that noble love should be spiritual rather than merely physical, that it should inspire great deeds and artistic achievement, that it should be conducted according to elaborate rules and rituals. These revolutionary concepts are taking shape in Eleanor's very presence. The physical setting for these cultural performances has been designed to create maximum emotional and aesthetic impact. Eleanor's Great Hall, renovated according to her specific instructions, incorporates architectural innovations that improve acoustics while providing visual splendor that reinforces her elevated status. The walls display tapestries depicting scenes from classical mythology and contemporary romance, creating visual narratives that complement and enhance the musical performances taking place below. Eleanor's afternoon activities typically focus on pursuits that demonstrate both her physical vitality and her connection to the martial culture that underlies medieval nobility. Her falconry expeditions, conducted with birds trained by experts imported from the Arab world, represent hunting refined to the level of high art. These magnificent birds, each worth more than a knight's annual income, demonstrate hunting capabilities that mirror the ideals of noble behavior that Eleanor seeks to embody and promote. The falconry expedition reveals the elaborate infrastructure required to support royal leisure activities. Professional falconers who have spent years mastering their craft attend Eleanor's every need, while specialized grooms ensure the care and training of horses bred specifically for royal use. Servants carry specially designed perches and equipment, while guards maintain security without disrupting the refined atmosphere that Eleanor seeks to preserve during these expeditions. The horses Eleanor rides represent another dimension of medieval luxury and technological achievement. These animals, descended from bloodlines carefully maintained across generations, possess speed, intelligence, and temperament that distinguish them dramatically from the working animals used by her subjects. Their saddles and bridles, crafted by specialized artisans using techniques passed down through guild traditions, incorporate precious metals and exotic materials that transform functional equipment into works of art worthy of royal use. Evening at Eleanor's court represents the culmination of each day's carefully orchestrated display of power, culture, and luxury. The great feast that concludes every day serves not merely as a meal, but as a theatrical performance that communicates messages about royal authority, cultural sophistication, and the abundance that flows from effective governance. These evening gatherings bring together the diverse elements of Eleanor's court: nobles, clergy, merchants, artists, and foreign dignitaries, in a setting designed to reinforce existing hierarchies while providing opportunities for advancement and alliance. The preparation for these evening feasts begins hours in advance and involves the coordinated efforts of dozens of specialists whose skills have been refined through years of service. The kitchens, vast underground chambers equipped with multiple hearths and ovens, become centers of intense activity as master cooks and their assistants prepare dishes whose complexity and exotic ingredients demonstrate Eleanor's ability to command resources from across the known world. The dining hall itself undergoes transformation as servants arrange tables according to protocols that reflect social hierarchies and political relationships with mathematical precision. Eleanor's high table, elevated above the rest of the hall, positions her where she can observe all activities while remaining the unquestioned focal point of attention. The placement of other guests, determined by birth, achievement, and current favor, creates a complex social map that everyone present can read and interpret. The entertainment during these feasts represents the highest achievements of medieval performance art, with musicians, acrobats, storytellers, and dancers creating elaborate spectacles that can last for hours. Their performances are carefully coordinated to complement the serving of food and consumption of wine, while their content often includes subtle political messages that celebrate Eleanor's achievements, reinforce the legitimacy of her rule, and demonstrate the cultural superiority of her court over rival centers of power. As the evening progresses and wine consumption increases, the formal protocols that govern earlier parts of the day give way to more relaxed interactions that nevertheless continue to serve important political and social functions. Eleanor's ability to maintain dignity and authority even during these less formal moments demonstrates the natural superiority that justifies her position, while her conversations with various courtiers create opportunities to reward loyalty, signal policy directions, and maintain the complex network of personal relationships that underlies medieval governance. The conclusion of Eleanor's day involves retirement rituals that mirror the elaborate protocols of her morning awakening. The preparation for sleep requires the coordinated efforts of her personal attendants, who assist with the removal of her elaborate clothing, the arrangement of her sleeping chamber, and the implementation of security measures that protect her during the vulnerable hours of darkness. Her bedtime prayers, conducted in her private chapel with its own chaplain, reinforce the divine sanction that legitimizes her earthly power while providing opportunity for genuine spiritual reflection on the day's achievements and challenges. The chapel itself, decorated with religious artifacts whose artistic value rivals their spiritual significance, creates an atmosphere of sacred beauty that elevates even this most private moment into an expression of royal magnificence. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep in the comfort and security of the modern world, consider the extraordinary complexity of life at the summit of medieval society. Eleanor of Aquitaine's day reveals not only the immense privileges available to medieval royalty, but also the constant performance and political calculation required to maintain such power in an age when personal authority depended on the continuous demonstration of superiority in all aspects of life. Her story reminds us how far we have traveled from those distant times, while honoring the remarkable achievements of those who shaped the medieval world through their vision, determination, and unwavering commitment to the responsibilities that accompanied their extraordinary privileges. As our journey through the shadows and splendor of medieval times draws to a close, we find ourselves at the threshold between past and present, carrying with us the echoes of voices that spoke centuries ago yet still resonate in the quiet moments before sleep. Tonight, you have walked alongside those who endured the most brutal medical procedures, witnessed the revolutionary achievements of brilliant scholars, marveled at technological sophistication that lay hidden for millennia, and observe the intricate choreography of power at its medieval pinnacle. The four stories we have shared reveal the extraordinary complexity of medieval existence, a world where suffering and splendor existed side by side, where revolutionary knowledge flourished amid political chaos, and where human ingenuity created marvels that would remain lost to time for centuries. From the monastery infirmary where Brother Aldrich Trepan promised healing through agonizing intervention, to the courts of Eleanor of Aquitaine, where every gesture reinforced the vast hierarchies that governed medieval society, we have seen how our ancestors navigated a world both fascinating and foreign to our modern experience. Consider the merchant's apprentice whose skull bore the permanent mark of medieval medicine's desperate attempts to cure what could not be understood. His story reminds us that behind every historical statistic lies a human being who faced pain, fear, and uncertainty with whatever courage they could muster. The procedure he endured, horrifying by modern standards, represented the best that his world could offer, a testament to the enduring human refusal to accept suffering as inevitable, even when the remedies available carried their own terrible costs. Ibn Sina's remarkable journey from the libraries of Bokhara to the siege of Isfahan illustrates how individual brilliance could transcend the limitations of its time while remaining bound by the political realities of medieval existence. His systematic approach to medicine, emphasizing observation over tradition and evidence over authority, established principles that continue to guide healing today. Yet his story also reveals the personal price often paid by those who push beyond accepted boundaries, the constant travel, political uncertainty, and physical decline that accompanied his intellectual achievements. The Antikythera mechanism, corroded and forgotten beneath Mediterranean waves for 2 millennia, challenges us to reconsider our assumptions about the technological capabilities of ancient civilizations. Its discovery reminds us that knowledge can be lost as easily as it is gained, that sophisticated understanding can disappear, leaving barely a trace, and that our ancestors may have achieved far more than we have credited them with accomplishing. Hidden within its bronze gears lies a humbling reminder that progress is neither linear nor inevitable. Eleanor of Aquitaine's daily routine reveals the extraordinary complexity required to maintain power in an age when authority rested on personal relationships, careful performance, and the continuous demonstration of superiority. Her life of unimaginable luxury was also one of constant political calculation, where every gesture carried meaning and every decision could affect the stability of kingdoms. Her story shows us how far we have traveled from a world where individual rulers held such concentrated power, while reminding us of the remarkable achievements possible when resources, intelligence, and opportunity converge. Each of these tales illuminates a different aspect of the medieval experience, yet together they reveal common themes that echo across the centuries. The persistent human drive to understand and alleviate suffering, evident in both the crude desperation of trepanation and the sophisticated methodology of Islamic medicine. The remarkable achievements possible even under conditions of political instability and technological limitation, demonstrated by both the Antikythera mechanism and Ibn Sina's comprehensive medical writings. The complex relationships between power and responsibility, knowledge and application, individual achievement, and social context that shaped medieval life at every level. Perhaps most importantly, these stories remind us of the debt we owe to those who came before us. The medical principles established by Ibn Sina continue to influence healing practices today. The technological innovations embodied in the Antikythera mechanism laid foundations for developments that would emerge centuries later. The cultural achievements fostered in Eleanor's court helped establish traditions of courtly behavior and artistic patronage that would influence European civilization for generations. Even the brutal realities of trepanation contributed to the gradual accumulation of medical knowledge that would eventually lead to more effective treatments. As you settle into the comfort and security of your modern bed, surrounded by conveniences that medieval people could never have imagined, consider how different your life might have been in those distant times. The simple act of falling asleep without fear of invasion, disease, or political upheaval represents a luxury that most of our ancestors could never take for granted. The pain relief available at the nearest pharmacy, the surgical procedures that can be performed with minimal risk, the vast repositories of human knowledge accessible at the touch of a button. All of these modern miracles rest upon foundations laid by countless individuals who struggled, discovered, and achieved within the constraints of their times. Yet for all our technological advancement and accumulated knowledge, the fundamental experiences that define human existence remain remarkably constant across the centuries. The desire to understand our world and improve our condition, the need for meaning and beauty in our lives, the complex relationships between individual ambition and social responsibility. These themes connect us across the vast span of time that separates our modern existence from the medieval world we have explored tonight. The rhythm of breathing that carries you towards sleep tonight echoes the breath of countless generations who faced their own challenges with whatever wisdom, courage, and hope they could muster. In their struggles and achievements, their failures and triumphs, we find not only fascinating stories, but also profound reminders of the resilience, creativity, and determination that characterize the human experience across all times and places. Let the gentle weight of centuries settle around you like a comfortable blanket, carrying you into dreams that might bridge the gap between past and present, between the medieval world of shadows and splendor and the modern realm of unprecedented possibility. In sleep, perhaps, we all return to that timeless place where human hopes and fears, dreams and nightmares, achievements and aspirations merge into the eternal story of our species' long journey through time. Rest well, knowing that you are part of a continuation that stretches back through Ibn Sina's libraries and Eleanor's courts, through ancient workshops where skilled craftsmen created mechanical marvels and monastery infirmaries where desperate healers sought to ease human suffering. Your story, too, will someday be part of history's long narrative, contributing its own chapter to the endless human quest for understanding, meaning, and improvement in the face of an uncertain world. Tonight, let the voices of the past sing you gently towards sleep, carrying with them the wisdom of ages and the promise that tomorrow's challenges, like those of yesterday, can be met with the same courage, creativity, and determination that have carried humanity through every trial and triumph in its remarkable journey through time.